Big bills are dying and some are sailing through. I'm David Smith with Thrive Advocacy Solutions. And can you believe we're already at our week 4 update? And I'm coming to you from a DC hotel room, staying warm and bringing you the updates and behind the scenes info on all that's happening in Richmond that impacts justice issues throughout Virginia. First, the bad news. We lost 2 good bills this week. A comprehensive bill to end mandatory minimums, HB 863, and Second Look, a bill that will allow judges to revisit certain sentences starting at 15 years of incarceration, HB 853. Both were patroned by Delegate Cousins. I had been cautiously optimistic about the mandatory minimums bill because some House leadership had referenced it in other hearings as a reason to vote against other new restrictions to people with convictions. But this was a new policy idea for Virginia, and I don't remember hearing this come up in my 10 years of the GA. And a new policy idea that's as paradigm shifting as this rarely gets beyond the committee on its first try. But with the positive things I've heard Democratic leadership saying about it, I think there is a future for this policy. So we'll have to be watching for this one next year. All right, Second Look, HB 853, has been a long time coming and unfortunately will have to wait a little longer. The fight for this bill is being led by Sheba Williams at No Left Turns, along with the ACLU of Virginia and FAM, that's Families Against Mandatory Minimums. So you see, Virginia hasn't had parole since 1994. That means the only way anyone sentenced after January 1st, 95 can reduce their sentence is through good time credits, which are minimal. When Delegate Cousins realized she didn't have the votes to get this bill out of committee, she had it pulled and no testimony was offered. Honestly, this was one of the best political moves I've seen so far this session. Last year, Attorney General Maieres paraded a bunch of crime victims to say how they'd be traumatized if folks had a chance to get out early. It made for powerful TV and social media sound bites. The newspaper headlines were horrible for people working on second chances. By pulling the bill, she shut down the ability for opponents to grandstand and try to sway public opinion. I've spoken with several key advocates for this bill, and they've got some big plans to build public support before the 2027 session. So I'm excited to see what they can do for next year. Now, we also have 21 bills that are still waiting to be docketed. Yes, 21 bills haven't even been docketed yet. Some are bad bills, adding new felonies or increasing punishment for existing offenses, and hopefully those won't get docketed. Some are good ones, like HB 193 from Delegate McQuinn, that would finally provide a review for all the people that were sentenced after Virginia eliminated parole. You know what I was just talking about a moment ago. But before juries were instructed that parole had been eliminated. RIHD has been fighting for this for years. It was assigned to the Courts of Justice Criminal Subcommittee on Saturday, the day that I'm taping this, so hopefully it gets a hearing this week. Now, let's talk about what's moving forward because a lot is. In fact, 47 of the 77 bills I'm tracking move forward, and bonus, none of the really bad ones have. So 15 bills I'm tracking have already passed the House. You'll see them passing by the screen right now. And 7 have already passed the Senate, as you see them going by the screen here. These include bills addressing care of pregnant women in custody, access to attorneys while incarcerated before trial, and money issues like bonds, fines, and fees, all things that are going to make our justice system more fair and just and responsive to people in need. And what's really great is most pass with bipartisan and some even pass with unanimous support. We're also seeing a lot of other bills move forward with bipartisan support. One that I'm very excited about is HB 246 from Delegate Watts. This bill is championed by decriminalizing developmental disabilities and creates an affirmative defense for people with mental illnesses or neurological disorders. Now, these are folks that might not understand what's happening in an encounter with police. Instead of being convicted of, say, for example, assault, if this bill passes, the court will be able to take into account their mental state and create a pathway forward for them that doesn't include incarceration or criminal legal punishments for people that never intended to cause harm. All right, and now let's wrap up with one really big question. What's up with the Department of Corrections? They've been decidedly quiet this year, even for a Democratic administration. We've seen the CO union testify against a few bills, but DOC hasn't really taken a stand against any of the bills. Now, I mentioned early on that I thought this may be because of the leadership transition, that they just hadn't had a chance to review things. But after some conversations with their staff and seeing some of the things they're instituting at the prison level, I think the governor may have told them to stand down on issues unless there were actual concerns. They seem to be in a listening and response phase right now. This week, they even changed their visitation policies to be more supportive of reunification. Are we seeing real changes because of a new administration? Time will tell. And you know what else time has told me? That this is the end of this week's legislative wrap up. You can still check out some of the better advocacy in 10-minute or less videos and come back next week when I'm back in Richmond for our week 5 update.